Joe, November of 2012 may feel like a long way away, but for those vying for the empty Senate seat, it will be here before you know it. Several politicians have already thrown their hat into the ring, looking to take Joe Lieberman's seat when he retires next year. And now there's a new poll that was released just last week. It breaks down what Connecticut voters have on their minds and who is leading the pack of Senate hopefuls. So this morning I'm joined by radio talk show host Lisa Wexler to talk all about it. Good to see you, as always, Lisa.
Wonderful. Always
on a Monday you can watch Lisa. So let's talk first about this political consultant group. It's Frank Lutz's group, Lutz Global.
Yeah.
Is this a credible study?
He's very famous.
Okay.
He's very credible. He talks about language. He actually is credited with helping the Republicans change the term global warming to climate change.
Isn't that interesting?
Isn't that interesting,
Yeah.
how important words are?
Yeah.
So there you go.
Let's talk a little bit about some of those people who are in or who are considering running for it. Christopher Shays gets some pretty high marks.
I was very surprised. I think he's the one that commissioned this poll.
Okay.
He kept a place.
How convenient.
Well, I think so. He kept a place in Bridgeport when he was considering running for governor, although now he's living in Maryland. And he's finishing up a commission that he was put on. He said his work is done in September. And I think he wants to know if there's interest, what the people think. And surprisingly, he comes within 2 percentage points of Chris Murphy, the Democratic congressman who was already declared that he wants the nomination for the Democrats.
Linda McMahon, who lost to Richard Blumenthal.
Yes.
What are her thoughts?
It looks like she might have been hurt in the last campaign because something like 80% of the people know her and have an opinion of her either way. But surprisingly, 57% or so said that they would not consider voting for her.
Another few that are in the top, Chris Murphy with about 39%,
yes.
Susan Bysowitz at 36%.
Yes, in a matchup of Susan Bysowitz and Linda McMahon, woman to woman, it looks like Susan Bysowitz wins, but not by all that much, a few percentage points. And in a matchup between Chris Murphy and Linda McMahon, Chris Murphy wins more substantially. But interestingly about that poll, there's no matchup of Republican to Republican. So there's no matchup of how they would do in a primary if Linda McMahon came back and decided to run against Chris Shays for the nomination, which might be one of the most important questions of the campaign.
And I believe some of the questions asked to the people who took this survey is, would you rather have a Democrat or a Republican as a senator? And I believe the Democrats won that question.
Which is not surprising in Connecticut. After all, last election, the Republicans swept every place except Connecticut.
Okay. Jim Hines also
well,
support?
He's our congressman from the 4th Congressional District. He's in his second term. He has not indicated any, other ambitions other than serving as congressman at this time.
Let's talk a little bit about job creation, because there were some questions about what's the most important thing for you and your family. Job creation was number one.
Number
on a few
one.
different questions.
But you know what's interesting about those questions, Logan? It was not open-ended. You were not able to say to the pollster, this is what is most important to me when I'm running. It was choose one of these 6, and you have to choose one of these 6. So, for example, abortion wasn't on that list. The environment wasn't on that list. And some of these issues are traditionally very important to Democrats who vote. So I thought there were some problems with the poll when you got into the questions themselves.
So is it too early to kind of choose who we think might be the front runner?
You know that a poll is a snapshot on a day and time, and we are notoriously fickle. I think it's anybody's game.
Right. What else are people talking about on the radio show?
I'll tell you what they're talking about. Brian Stelter of the New York Times wrote a report, an article last week that really got my attention. Of course, it was buried in the middle of the paper. But Reverend Al Sharpton has been rumored to be a strong candidate for the 6 p.m. time slot on MSNBC. And what Brian Stelter reported on was that he was an active lobbyist for the merger between Comcast and NBC in front of the FCC. And even though Comcast and NBC are saying that their editorial decisions have nothing to do with the business side of their business, it is questionable to me, looking at this impartially, it does not pass my smell test, that somebody who actively campaigned for a merger, which was so important to them, would maybe somehow be rewarded with a time slot. The man is an activist, he's an advocate. But he has a problematic past because of his Toronto Brawley origination, which he did not apologize for, and he's not a journalist. So you look at that, you look at Roland Logan, who has a 50,000-watt station right here, our ex-governor, and you look at Elliot Spitzer, another discredited, and you have to say if the medium is the message, As Marshall McLuhan said 40 years ago,
yes,
we've got some problems.
Lisa Wexler, always good to talk to you.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Logan.
that. A reminder, you can always listen to Lisa on the radio Monday through Friday, 4 to 6, 1400 WSTC and 1350 WNLK. We're back right after this.
Thanks, Logan. Thanks for letting me get that right.